Hello, friends and fellow pioneers. I have the pleasure of having Michael Kilpatrick here with us. Michael is I'm going to allow him to introduce himself, but I just want you to know that he's going to be talking to us about how to have a successful, profitable, and enjoyable farming operation. And with that, Michael, I'm just going to let you just jump in and tell us how did you start? How did you get to be, at your age? In the position that you're in, how did you get into farming and educating farmers around the world?
Yeah. So my history is a little bit, my brother and I started a farm when we were 15 and 16. No one told us we couldn't, and so we just started growing things. I started the first year by hatching ducklings and chicks in old refrigerators, so you can convert them into incubators, and that's what we did. We were hatching hundreds of birds a year. I was also raising Indian corn and gourds. I thought that was going to be my pathway to success. Pretty much doing the lowest profit per acre crops on micro scale. So after a year or two of figuring out that wasn't quite what we needed to be into, we started doing high intensive vegetables, and that was very much more profitable. And so then we scaled that business in upstate New York to managing about 500 acres overall. We were growing vegetables intensively on 15 acres, had a crew of 20. We were at 4 farmers markets a week. So that was a pretty big business. We had a 350, 400 member CSA. And then we distributed throughout the capital district up there. So then 2015, we ended up shutting that business down. My wife and I did. I got married, had a child. She wanted to be near her family here in Ohio. So we moved here to Ohio about 2015. And then in 2018, we started, 2017, we started our Growing Farmers Company, which helps farmers build the life they want and help them reduce the stress in their farming life. Excuse me. And then we started the farm we're on now this spring, the farm on Central. And now we're building out an 8-acre urban farm, and we're focusing on feeding our community. So yeah, that's kind of the short history there.
Awesome. And I've loved watching you growing your impact, and it's been exciting to see and to actually got to be at a farm where one of your students was implementing some of your, I guess, one of your processes, and it was just so lean. It was just awesome. Let's talk about Michael. Let's talk about the times that we live in. Before 2020. I can only imagine that you've gained a little bit more of a spotlight of people maybe wanting to do this. It's becoming like a more real yearning. And a lot of people that are into homesteading or want to become homesteaders are trying to figure out how they can make a go at having some income from the farm. Can you talk to us about kind of where you see kind of the climate of people's interest in what's going on and the influx of students that you're having? Just tell us about basically trends that you're seeing of different people being interested in it and what they're doing with it.
Yeah, so obviously when the whole pandemic hit in 2020, the demand for local food skyrocketed. So many farmers of my friends had the best year they've ever had. I mean, they were out going buying brand new tractors and all that because they were just, so many people were looking for local foods. Obviously that's kind of shifted now. The next year happened. People started to go back to a quasi normal. And so the demand dropped again. But now what we're seeing is people are now losing their jobs left and right due to not wanting to take the vaccine, or just not wanting to go back to work. They're seeing that they basically, part of the pandemic is that it part of the veil of kind of what was the matrix and what was going on behind the scenes. And so people are like, I don't want to be part of this. And so they stepped away, and they stepped away and were just looking for something else. And so that's why you see people going into farming. So these are kind of all different trends we're seeing. Obviously, we're also seeing a massive trend of the cost of supplies increasing. So that's what us farmers are seeing now. Like this month alone, our shipping went up 20%. And that's just this month. plastic containers and stuff like that have doubled in price. We're also seeing shortages. So like the West Coast is suffering a drought, which we're only going to see increase. And then we're also seeing massive shortages of just shipping. Price of shipping has gone up drastically. So bringing food from California is more expensive. And so just all those put together are causing people to, wanting them out of the system, wanting to start their own thing, and getting more interested in getting on the land and getting out of the public.
And what is some feedback that you're getting from new students as to, when they come into directly, like, have you had any people that are totally new and they just jump in, and instead of doing the trial and error, tell us about that. Have you had any instances like that where they actually just come in through your system and they're able to get up and running?
Yeah, well, I think farming is a very challenging overarching. It's a very low margin. It takes a lot of skill. And the other thing is that it's very dependent upon the weather. So, obviously the biggest success we're seeing is people that come in and put up, let's say, a hoop house or something, and they're able to produce more right there. I mean, we focus more on people. We have two ideal people we work with. One is they're just starting out. We can help them get really the big picture. So buy the right piece of property, find the right markets, that sort of thing. And then the second person we work with is someone who's a little bit more advanced, and they're just trying to figure out their systems. And, they've literally been doing it, just treading water, as it were, on their farm. And so kind of seeing both of those. Obviously right now we're seeing beginners come on, and they're trying to find farms, or they're trying to just get more established. And so the success we're seeing there is getting them into a farmer's market or getting into someplace they can sell their product. But it is also a challenge too, because depending on how the different communities are dealing with this, some of those farmers markets are still shut down. So that can be a big of a challenge for them as well. My biggest thing though, what I love to talk about the success is are the farmers that have been doing it for a bit, who basically are trying to support their family. And then we come in and give them our system, which basically helps them get more time back in their life, decrease their stress, they'll spend more time with their family. So the biggest thing is being able to understand the business side of farming, just how you do your books, how you build a marketing plan that starts to help you grow your business on autopilot. Because once we put those systems in place, then you're set up for success. Because if you basically set up a system for your invoices, and now your invoices are now 5 minutes a week instead of an hour a week, and you're no longer writing checks because they're automatically coming out of your bank once a month, and we don't have to focus on hiring people anymore, because you've got a really good team and you have more people that want to work for you. Right now, we just had a bookkeeping job, and I think we had 8 applications, and the furthest one, we had one person that was 4.5 hours away apply for the position. They're like, I know it's supposed to be on site, but I'll come down once every 2 weeks and spend a couple days and take care of it that way. And we were like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work quite like that. But once you have those systems set up, you build that farm and that system, which people are attracted to. They want to be a part of it. They want to join your farm family, and it just now starts to work. So that's what we love to see. Obviously, we love to get people set up on the right farm, get them started out, but we really love to see those overworked farmers who are just like treading water, so worried about how they're going to make the next month payroll, and get their system set up so that they can succeed.
That's awesome, because the ability to reduce the stress is priceless.
Yeah.
There's just enough going on in the world, and there's like you said, it's just very challenging, so many variables. And so to have some constants is such a blessing, to be able to count on that.
Yeah.
So tell us about the industry, basically, new farmers, and also the education for new farmers. What are some trends also that you've seen that are really not helping the situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, the number one thing that any farm has to deal with is government intervention and basically unrealistic prices for product. And obviously that goes back to the government subsidizing conventional and industrial agricultural systems. So, I mean, if it costs the pork industry $32 to process a pig and it costs you $200, you automatically now have $180 less per pig that you're making. And that's typically your profit. So that's why margins are razor thin. I mean, looking at to just process a cucumber into a pickle, you need a 20C kitchen. So all those things are just massively, guys. When we moved into town here, we spent over $10,000 doing the planning because you need to have very specific things because they want to know every little detail about the elevations and, if there was the rain, what would happen in this part of the property. So, those are the kinds of things which keep businesses from being full-time, keep them from hiring more people, keep farmers from actually being able to make a living and farm full-time a lot of the time is the government bothering them. I was just talking to my apple guy yesterday. So we don't grow apples, but we work with a farmer about an hour away. He's very low spray. He does a great job with his orchard. And he was talking about every year, the USDA, FDA comes in and inspects his thing. And he was like, if I have a couple apple leaves on the floor of my apple barn, they're going to throw a fit. My cider, he says, I take my cider to market frozen because he doesn't have refrigerators at the market, but it's frozen. It's frozen. And he had a USDA guy come and basically shut his whole stand down while he stood there and ranted about how it wasn't in a refrigerator. And he's like, what is the temperature that this is supposed to be? He's like, well, 36 to 42. And he's like, take your thermometer out and measure, and it will be 33 degrees. So it's below that, and so you shouldn't have a problem. Well, the guy, of course, forgot his thermometer because, government agents don't have to be, there's no reckoning for them. They just do whatever the heck they want because they're protected by immunity. They have immunity against anything they do wrong. And so he obviously didn't have his thermometer that day and eventually left. But this guy then, he's got 3 hours to make his living at the farmer's market. And this guy took up a half hour of his time. You need a line of customers, 20 deep. So that's just the kind of things you see. I mean, again, here we had a situation where we supposedly needed a permit. I argued with them for 3 weeks about we didn't need a permit because we're agricultural. I ended up spending $1,000+ and wasting 3 weeks to do what they said I had to do. And the inspector comes out and says, actually, you didn't need this permit. Well, does the city chuck me back the $1,000? No, they're not going to do that. They didn't even give me an email saying, hey, we're sorry, we screwed up. It's just, okay, sorry, whatever, it's just like, whatever, deal with it. So, I think that's to be the number one thing is just dealing with government intervention. I don't know how many people I see in the Facebook groups like, well, if I grow microgreens, do I have to get a license? Or if I, package this up, what do I have to do about this? So, the government's not your friend. The government's there to protect their monopoly and their cronyism. And it really is hurting small farmers. One of the things that we've made really good money on this year, a couple different things, is taking our cucumbers and turning the pickles. You can charge the double for a cucumber as a pickle than you can as just a regular cucumber. We take our seconds on sweet potatoes and we chop those up and turn them into sweet potato bites. And so it's we got a sweet potato that broke or it's cracked or it's ugly. And those are perfect because they're super big, and we chop them into 1-inch cubes and we sell them for double the money. And again, it's something that if we would have had to set up a 20C kitchen, and that's just not, easy to do for a small farm. And then it just brings the government out for another time to bother you. So those are the kinds of things which I think are really challenging the small farmer getting started. Another thing I would say is access to business farming information. That's kind of why our business exists, is to make that really readable, available for folks. But people know how to, you can grow crops. There's lots of information on how to grow a tomato, how to grow cucumber, how to pick apples. But there's not a lot of information out there. Okay, I want to do this as a business. How do I put all the pieces together? Because as a farmer, you're not only growing it, you're marketing it, you're doing the businesses, you're trying to understand your taxes, all that kind of stuff is something that the farmer is responsible for. You're doing your own maintenance a lot of times. And so having all that information is something that's a lost art.
Yeah, that is challenging in every area of life, but especially, there's so many freedoms here or more opportunities as a farmer that you should have on your property. We had a situation here where we, had a citation and we had to deal with the fact that I said, we're getting our ag status, in the
Yeah.
process. And they were like, well, if you just send me that, it's no problem. And I'm like, I mean, if it's an environmental threat, it either is or it's not, but they just come up with these things that don't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
It was just, we had some leaves for composting and they said it was 300, it had to be like 300 feet, the point being, it was like, I was like, if this is a hazard, how does it stop being a hazard if it's residential or
Yeah.
ag? But the ag valuation that we had made it to where that could go away, thankfully. Otherwise, we would have had to unnecessarily be moving our dry leaves that we had brought
Yeah.
by, another farm for us to do that. And so it does take some, and it's not just, it's just like a mental weight down, like it weighs you down to have to
Yeah.
deal with these things that don't make sense. Now, tell me about the farm education, and are you seeing any trends of what people are being told to do when they're getting started or to help their farm that is really not helpful? Like, tell me about some things that maybe are a little bit different when they come through your academy, your university,
Yeah.
that maybe they don't know because they've been told some counterproductive things.
Yeah, there's a couple different things we have to face out there. Number one is like, everyone's farm should look just a very specific way. Like you should just grow vegetables on a 30-inch bed system and sell them at a farmer's market. Well, that doesn't work for everybody. And the problem is when you're at that scale, you're typically doing a lot of the work manually, and that's an immense expense of physical exertion. And so that's one of the things we try to do is use proper technology and infrastructure to do work easier, and not just spend all your energy on that. So, that's one of the things. I think the other thing is like, well, if you just grow it, they'll come. Well, that's not necessarily true. You've got to actually do marketing. It's got to be good quality stuff. You got to know who your customer is and how you're going to market to them. All of those things are business things, which people don't teach you. Another thing I see people do is they put in the Facebook groups, like, how much should I charge for this? And I was like, actually, that's not very helpful because they don't know your cost of production. We live in Ohio, land's like $8,000 to $9,000 an acre. California, you're looking at $20,000 to $40,000 an acre. You rural Idaho, it's probably $1,000 to $2,000 an acre. So they're right there, a massive variance that you have to account for when you're looking at where you're going to be located. So that's, and if you're going to a farmer's market versus a CSA versus selling wholesale, big difference there as well. So you have to really think about and know your costs of production. And so obviously it takes a little bit of time to figure that out. That's something we're obviously looking at. And the other day, let's see, we ran the numbers, my farm manager and we ran the numbers on what we need to make per week per 100-foot bed. And it comes down to $8.57. That's exactly what we need to account for to cover just overhead. So overhead for us would be property taxes, the cost of the mortgage on the land, the cost of the management team, because the management team is not necessarily doing the production work. So those are the kinds of things which people aren't thinking about. And so one of the things we really recommend they do when they start is we do a lot of holistic planning questions. We help them figure out their vision. We talk about the big picture, where do they want to go in life? What is their farm to look like? Okay, kind of like vision casting. And then we move into, okay, so if that's what you want, how do you step back, progressively here, go from channels to how much you need to make per channel, to how much vegetables you need to grow, to, which vegetables be part of that mix, to what you need to charge for them. So moving back like that, instead of just growing stuff and say, okay, how am I going to sell it? We say, all right, this is what you want to do. This is the end result you want to go for. How do we make that happen and purposely steer you for that? And a lot of the conversations we have here on our farm is like, what does this farm need to look like in a year for us to be successful and us to be happy? And so that's the kind of things that we're kind of working through is really figuring those kinds of things out with people to start. Then we can teach them how to grow. Then we can teach them how to buy the right farm. Then we can teach them how to put the irrigation in, to set up their chart of accounts, to all those other things. That's kind of where we're going with all of this, is kind of we look at it from a completely different point of view. We're like, where do you want to go? Let's figure out what that looks like and work backwards. And then instead of just trying to grub for a little bit more money every single week, we plan the system, then work the system instead of just trying to figure out a system by the seat of our pants. And along the way, losing spouses, losing your kids, losing the farm, stressing out, all that kind of stuff. Not fun.
And that's awesome. Michael, just to hear you talk about that, because one of the things we do in our academy is to help people understand that you don't become strong or free, have freedom by just doing more of what you're doing. You have to start with being strategic, and then
Yeah.
that can become sustainable. Then you can get some muscle and be stronger. And you said something about the cost and looking at cost. If someone is right now looking at buying a homestead and considering farming and doing a CSA or a farmer's market, let's talk about margin. You talked about some of the unexpected expenses and unexpected challenges of having that cash flow. A lot of the times people might consider buying a farm like they would having a house or a mortgage, but they're not realizing how much more you have to invest.
Yeah.
Our amount of expenses in infrastructure is enormous. So let's talk a little bit about some wisdom for people on understanding the amount of margin that you have to have, because you're not buying a like a what are those called, franchise. You're not buying
Yeah.
a franchise that everything's calculated. You're going to have a lot of variables. So what would you say
Yeah.
to that?
First, I would say that every farm is different. Okay. So my farm that I had in New York is very different than the farm we had here. And my next farm will be very different than this one again. Every single time we plan on something, again, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I love to build something, and then I love to, pass it on to the next generation, the next person that's going to manage it, and then start something fun and new. So everything's going to be different. You got to think that, like, okay, you look at a piece of property, like, that's beautiful. Okay, but let's back up and, like, what are we going to do with that piece of property? It's not just about, you can't just buy cattle and throw it on. If it's, that's just two properties right here. If it's heavy clay in the middle of Idaho, you're going to want to probably put cattle on that. If it's, very sandy soil in Georgia, that's a heck of a lot more suited for sweet potatoes. And it's not going to be good for cattle because it's all the grass is going to dry up and burn up because of the heat. So again, you have to really kind of look at your farm system and what you're going to put on that, and then go back from there. So you just don't want to buy you don't just want to buy something and think I'm going to do it on it. You want to plan for that. So part of that, there's 6 things you always need to think about. You look at location, you look at your political climate, like, how easy is it to actually do stuff on your farm? Like you were saying earlier, you've got to look at access to the property. You got to look at your water systems. You got to look at your roads. Can you get trucks in and out? Is you close enough to your market? That's always going to be a huge thing as well. And then let's kind of move on to, like, the infrastructure. So obviously, I'm always a fan of blank slate and build your own infrastructure, because that way you're going to get the exact infrastructure you need instead of basically trying to manage something else. So, we came on here, the only thing that was our house and a 30 by 50 something pole barn. And that was fine, although I did have to jackhammer up the floor to put in drains. And so that was some work. And so if we'd been able to pour that in place like we wanted it, it would have been a heck of a lot easier, and we could have purpose formed it for exactly what we needed. So, doing that, infrastructure on a farm, it really depends too. You can start a small organic vegetable farm on a ½ acre in the middle of the city. You can get off for $20,000 and build a pretty good infrastructure. A little bit bigger if you're putting like a farm market in and a bunch of greenhouses and retail, $50,000 to $100,000 very easily. And I've seen people spend over $1 million depending on, what they're trying to do. I'm on a project right now down in the Carolinas that is probably going to be several $1 million by the time we're done, but the return is going to be incredible when it's really all fleshed out. So it really depends on what you decide to build. And so that's where along the way, you really need to get hooked up with a good consultant, someone who knows your business, someone who can basically say, here's what you're forgetting. You forgot about irrigation, or you forgot about how you're going to transport those vegetables to the farmer's market. So those are all the things you kind of need to work through to make sure that you do it right. Now, when we bought this farm, the vehicle we bought was actually a minivan. And the reason for that is we could count it as a work vehicle, and we use it every single week, but we can also use it for a personal to haul the kids around. So we, again, we're going dual use. We're being really, conscientious about the things we're buying. We don't own a pickup truck. And some people, laugh at us. My father-in-law thinks I'm nuts, but I have a really good friend that has a pickup truck and I can use it whenever I need it. And we just pay people to truck stuff to us because my time on the farm is the most important, valuable time. And most people are willing to truck their products to you if you pay them a little bit extra. Now we're paying, $1 a mile or something like that, or they deliver for free. So again, trucking is something that a farm doesn't need to be an expert in. You need to be an expert in growing the product that's unique to your farm and marketing it, and let someone else worry about, again, basically moving stuff around the country for you.
I love that. And I have a confession to make too. We had this old truck that was like a little dream project. And then we had a situation. It's not really a positive story, but let's see. Long story short, the truck that we thought was going to be our old farm truck, there was a situation where we were conned, let's just say.
Yeah.
And so we wanted somebody to fix it. And after a ton of money, it didn't work out. And so we found this van that is like 4-wheel drive, and it has like racks on top, and it has the hitch or whatever, and it's awesome because we can use it, cover, inside, and Jason's done amazing things like that. So a really great minivan is an awesome investment, and especially if it's a used one that you don't mind getting dirty or banged up or whatever. And like you said, you can haul people around, volunteers, children, your team, and it's fantastic. So it's kind of getting outside of that mentality. And the other thing is like farming equipment. You can invest tens of thousands into a certain tractor, or get something like a BCS 2-wheel tractor, and you can get implements, and it's a lot more versatile if it's a small space that you're dealing with. There's options out there, but the time to save is, like you said, with having a consultant or a coach or somebody that can help mentor you before you invest and drive it off the lot, let's say. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, tell me something that you really have loved about staying in this, industry. Obviously you moved and you had the opportunity to do something different. You had the opportunity to just let somebody else fix the problems with farming education. But tell us some of the things that are really rewarding for you doing this.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing rewarding is I love growing things. So being able to walk outside every morning and see all the beautiful plants that are growing, and knowing we're harvesting those and delivering those to help our community be healthier, that's just a huge motivation for me every day. Obviously, on the growing farmer side, the education side is just seeing farms change, seeing farms go from overworked, stressed out, being able to take a Friday night off and go out to dinner with their spouse, or take their family on a 3-day vacation, or just go down to the river middle of the summer and raft down the river and take a tube ride. So, and just see them invest in infrastructure, buy that new tractor, or the walk-in cooler they need, that kind of stuff. So seeing them be less stressed and enjoying their family more is what it's all about to me. I love hanging with the kids, loving doing that with them, and being able to just share that knowledge so that these people can have the freedom that we have is absolutely key. So I think that's the biggest thing is seeing the freedom from our farmers that work with us, and then also just growing cool stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael, for sharing. I will say, when you were talking about having the friend with a truck that or having things delivered, there is something that came to mind we didn't know about, but there's certain parts of the country that can get kind of tricky with maybe like if you are on a more remote location. There are, well, at least in Texas, for example, there are these building supply companies that will deliver for like a flat fee of like $79. It might, might have gone up a little bit, but they service like a huge radius for those areas that are like that. And so you don't even have to rent a truck. You just pay a flat delivery fee for that order, and you just strategically plan, and then you have all those materials delivered. And like you said, there's so many other ways than just having a truck that you have to service and have all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cost of trucks too have gone up substantially. I mean, again, if you have the money and want to buy a truck, that's fine. But A lot of farmers, the first thing they do, they buy a piece of land and then buy a $70,000 truck and like, okay, I'm a real farmer now. No, you just blew your entire budget on a truck, which is you're going to not want to get dirty and you're not going to buy a trailer for and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to the type of farm you're building. I'm obviously in the West doing cattle, you need a whole cattle trailer. That's a big difference than, if you're doing a vegetable farm or even a smaller scale farm in the East Coast. But again, and I guess the lens I would say is just look at every single equipment purchase with, do I absolutely need this? How can I get by without it? And what are some other things that we could do to make it work? So, yeah.
Lots of wisdom. So Michael, tell us about some of with growing farmers, if somebody is considering that they might want to buy land and build a homestead and maybe have a try at the CSA or growing food to sell and those kinds of things, and you're interested in some of the services that you offer. Beyond the growingfarmers.com, I just wanted to ask you, just beyond like the university or the course, are you available for consulting? Can you tell us more about how you're accessible to people?
Yeah. I do a very limited number of projects, and typically it has to be a pretty interesting project for me to get involved. I've turned down more projects this year than I've accepted. But if it's the right thing, I mean, we'll jump all over it and put our whole resources behind it. We've got quite a team that we can pull on, so we can do some really cool stuff. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can go out to our Growing Farmers page. I think there's a page there. They can just say, hey, request a consultation or something like that. Our team will follow up with you about kind of like what the next steps are. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do on-site too. That's very, very limited, but I have done a couple on-sites this year. And it's, the beauty of that is that when we start a project, typically we say Michael needs to be on site if it's a large scale project at least once. And then we'll go from there with over the phone, because I need to get on there. I need to feel it. I need to understand how the property is laid out. And then we can kind of start masking out, what the different levels of permanence are, how things are going to be set up, where the big picture is how that's going to happen.
Great. And we did put the link in the description below to your website, growingfarmers.com, and people can check out all the different ways that they can get involved with your community. Are there any final things that you would share with people, again, whether they've just purchased a homestead or they're trying to figure out how to monetize the land that they have, or they're looking at are just buying raw land, which is the wisdom that we would pass on? Are there any final things that you can share just overall with your experience with monetizing from having land and trying to grow things, for the beginner?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you have to find the right type of land. So obviously, heavy clay, it's cheap land, but you can really go out of business fast on heavy clay if you're in the wrong enterprises. You always have to think about water, especially on the West Coast. Water is key. Even in the Ohio here, if we didn't have irrigation this year, we would have been some major problems because we had an 8-week drought. We're on a very sandy soil. So those two things are right there. And then I think the third is you just have to know your markets. That's one of the massive things we focus on always is what are our people looking for? What do they want? What do they say? And, since we started our farm, we now have 5 different distinct avatars. So avatar is basically a different type of person who we're selling to. So it's very specific of knowing who they are and what those people want, the language they're talking. And 2 of those avatars, we already know they're not our ideal customer. They're not the people we want to be marketing to. So we're actually phasing out our marketing to those type of people and just changing our messaging and what we're saying, because we know exactly who the right person is for us. So yeah, that's kind of the advice I would have is again, the other thing is just go back to the aspect of know your business and build a business plan. Again, if you don't have that, if you're just trying to fly by the seat of your pants, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to spend money you don't have, and you're going to end up frustrated and having to go back to working again for the industry.
And we can totally say that you're right on with the clay. Our property, we didn't really necessarily buy it because of it being super a bargain. It was because of a location that we wanted to be in. And it's been a tough decade. I mean, not just 1 year. It's just learning how to grow
Yeah.
things here with this black clay that looks awesome, but it doesn't. It's not awesome. It's very difficult. So I hope for those of you who are watching, you're taking notes, that you can totally buy, whether it's cheap land or not, doesn't really matter, but the material, the quality of the land that you're buying, if you want to grow something and be profitable, you basically, like I say all the time, you invest now and save later, or save yourself the time and the trouble now, and then you're going to pay later. And we have paid dearly with a lot of failures because we
Yeah.
didn't really know how to grow things on this type of soil, and it really kills momentum. So thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your story. I did want to ask you, are your courses available certain seasons of the year?
Yeah, we do. So our small farm university is open year round. And the reason for that is, yeah, we do have the seasons where we have, specific offers and have special bonuses and stuff, but it is open year round. The reason for that is we know some people find us at different times of the year, and we don't want them to have to wait months to get help. So again, we leave stuff open. But jump on in. It's again, it's one of those things, like we have a couple courses that you kind of have to go through because we know the problems that farmers face on the start with. And so you have to kind of go through those problems, those lessons first. And that really helps you get your time back. And because if you can get an hour or two back a week, you're going to be such more of a sane business operation than running crazy around all the time. So that's what I would say first is just, jump in, focus on those first couple courses that we put out. And then we do have, larger enrollments and special offers throughout the year too for specific courses. Just jumping on those. But I would say go to our website, growingfarmers.com. We have some great free e-guides to get started with. We have one specifically on land acquisition. We have a couple on just, farm efficiency. We have some challenges and some audits and that sort of thing to kind of jump in and grab for free. So, or jump into our podcast, thrivingfarmerpodcast.com, over 150 episodes now. So all sorts of great info to help you thrive as a farmer. Or if you just want to learn about farming, we've got great info to help you get learning about farming so you don't waste money diving in when it's not right fit for you.
That is such good wisdom. And I will say, when you were talking about knowing your customer types and all of that, and how you said that you're phasing 2 out, I think having the confidence to let go of things that are not working anymore, because sometimes you do pivot for things that it may be working for other people, but it may not be for you, for where you are right now. And just to give yourself the freedom and have the permission to say, you know what, and then you're releasing those customers to focus on having other people give them service that they are the perfect target audience for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really interesting. There's actually 2 other people in our area that have farm stands, and they're a very different type of farm stand. And it's really interesting. I didn't even notice when they opened for the season, and we didn't even notice when they closed for the season, because they attract people that aren't our avatar or the type of the ideal customer. So very to see that, and we're all going to exist fine. And there may be like 6 people that don't buy from us when those people have tomatoes for $1.99 a pound, but those aren't the customers we're looking for. We want the ones that are happy to pay $3 plus a pound because they know it's grown without chemicals, it's growing in the soil on our farm, not brought in from 2 states away.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy to hear of the success that you're having and the influence and impact that you're having with other farmers. And I appreciate you taking the time today to be with me here, and allowing us to have this time to record and leave this legacy of wisdom, pass it on to the next generation of landowners and potential farmers. And again, as you're watching, have the freedom, give yourself the permission to understand when is the right season for you to buy the land, to get started farming, and then seek out mentors and consultants. If you have, again, a large enough project, you can reach out, or a project that would seek Michael's attention, reach out to Michael. They could probably even refer you to other consultants if it doesn't fit. But getting that strategic help at the beginning can really make or break the success of your experience, the experience that you're having. And again, it's not worth, especially if you have a family, it's really not worth the risk of trying to go at it all on your own. And like Michael said, your savings and everything could go with it.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to really give it a lot of thought and to learn from people, and check out Michael's podcast to get even more wisdom from the people in his circle that he has interviewed, so that you can get an idea of what it takes and what other people are doing and what could be the best fit for you to get started. And remember, the way that you started is not the way, a lot of the things that Michael was doing, he's no longer doing. The things that we got started doing at the beginning, you just grow and learn what really works for you. And it's not really the success of the project, it's your interest and your passion to do it. It's a big factor as to whether you should continue to do it as well. So thanks again, Michael. And for those of you who are watching, you know that I'd like to leave you with a blessing. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, shine his face toward you, be gracious unto you, turn his countenance towards you, and give you shalom peace.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And everyone, remember, check out the links in the comments below.